Hello everybody and welcome to this Harts podcast. This is going to be the first of many, or one of many I should say, and we hope to bring you some very interesting speakers over the next few months, so watch out for those. Today I've got with me Mr. Andrew Whiteley, who's in charge of our accounts department here at Harts. Thank you very much for joining me this morning, Andy. And what I'd like to do first of all is just ask you, how did you get involved in accountancy and the accountancy profession?
Well, very simply, really. Didn't really enjoy my school years, my high school years, although I did very well in my GCSEs. I didn't really see any future in college and things like that. I wanted to get out into the big wide world and start working. Applied for a couple of banks and tried to go down that route, but then got offered a job within an accounts practice, just around the corner from where we are now, to be honest. And kind of started from there. Very much working with fairly small companies, little what we now know as IR35 companies, and it dates back to the days before computers and things like that, showing my age a little bit.
So lots of paper and pens. And
a lot of paper and pens, big
yes.
analysis, A3 sheets of paper,
yes.
Old style cash books and simplex D books.
And the old ledgers and ticking across from one ledger to the next.
Oh, exactly,
yes.
exactly.
Remember the days.
Ticking off the bank and very much that kind of approach. And I was there for quite a long time, to be honest, and quite, crucial to the business, and worked very closely with the partner there. It was a very small practice, but I found that I kind of enjoyed what I did and could rattle them out quite quickly, and we did quite a lot of business through it, and obviously learn all the double entries, all extended trial balances, and obviously what we now know is old school way of doing everything.
Yes.
But where it really kicked off is after I left there, I went for work in a much bigger firm in Stoke, and it was quite a culture shock for me to go from a very small practice to a very big practice. But it was certainly a big eye opener, and started to get into the world of audits and things like that. And it wasn't until I left there and moved to Altrincham, to a firm in Altrincham, which again went back to a smaller practice, but there was a much bigger, broader spectrum of work we were involved with. And that's where the team there really pulled out of me all the years of I've been doing the job and everything else, and that's where it really exploded for me, and really found a passion for the job. And then my wife got pregnant, and I was commuting up to Manchester, and then there was a local firm applying for exactly what I did. I went there and kind of snowballed from there, and really got involved in audits, audit seniors, running all the audits and everything else, and really, and also my big passion, of course, is the Sage software.
Yes.
That's my big thing, as everyone knows. I'm quite, I don't mind.
Sage nerd, as he's known in the
Sage
geek.
Office. Yes. Sage geek, so you don't mind admitting that. And I became telephone support effectively for a large number of clients that, because if you ring Sage, you don't get a bespoke service, you just get, this is what the software does. Whereas with myself, I knew the client, I knew what they were trying to do, and therefore we could tailor what Sage was doing to suit them. And that's where I got a lot of my client skills and client contact and all that sort of thing, and was really I could say a fifth emergency service to them. If they needed something, they could pick up the phone and I could sort it out. And then obviously that progressed furthermore. I was thoroughly enjoying myself, but then Harts came knocking, and it was an opportunity I couldn't really turn down. Been here for 7 years now.
And what's your role here within Harts, and how many team members have you got in your team?
So I still remember the interview I had with David and Melissa, and you'd be managing a team of about 5 people, and obviously the growth has been there, and we've been able to take a lot more people. So I'm managing the accounts team, and now Rebecca's taken over doing all the audit side of things. I can more focus just on the accounts, year-end accounts, supporting the VAT return team, and a lot of all ad hoc bits and pieces. A lot of client contact, making sure the clients are being looked after, obviously going out and getting new business, but for me it's the clients we've got that we want to look after, give them the best service we can. A big thing for me, and literally 10 minutes ago I just got off the phone from someone who emailed me saying, "Oh, thanks for doing the accounts, I don't quite understand them, but I'll approve them." And I instantly said, "Look, don't do that. When do you want to speak about this?" And we'll go through it. So I'm going to speak to her later on, and we'll go through everything. So if she understands a bit more.
Absolutely.
That's
clients have got to be at the heart of everything. They've got to understand what we do.
Completely. And they need to know what their business, what these accounts are showing them. What is that information there for them? You know, and if they're not understanding what they're seeing, and it's an important. At the end of the day, it's a legal document. A set of accounts. People forget that the signature is on there saying you approve them and you're happy with them. That conversation can be brief. It can be fairly short, but normally gives them insight. Plus, it gives some future proofing and some future development to them. To be able to say, right, well, what areas do I really need to look into? You know, where are my costs high? Where can I save some
So
costs?
we start adding value to what we're actually giving the client, so they're not just getting a set of accounts, sign here, here's the bill, and here's your tax bill.
Most firms do compliance work.
Yes.
You can go to any accountancy firm in the country and they'll do a set of accounts.
Yes.
It's what extra you give it, the communication and the support and the understanding, you know. Empowering a client is very important to me.
So going back to the old days, because we both remember the old days, unfortunately, you used to get records in basically one type, and that was a big brown box or a big plastic bag. Carrier bag of records. Thankfully, those days are nearly long gone, although we still get some records in that basis.
Still an awful lot,
but with the advent of technology now, it's making a big change in the way compliance work is being done. What's your view on the way perhaps QuickBooks has affected the market?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just QuickBooks. I mean, obviously coming up from a Sage background and the software background, I've had to adapt to the whole new way of approaching accounts, as I did when I left the manual records, you know, and computers came in and Excel and all this sort of thing that changed the way we did it. It's exactly another step towards that. And obviously the online programs now offer so much connection to the wider internet of things. I think
most of apps that are out there which you can add on to the software and so on.
But fundamentally, the online programs are effectively what we started with when I was doing all my manual records. It's an electronic cash book. You know, you're recording your income, your expenditure, and obviously the bank and all your your cash flow and all your money transactions is at the heart of all that. So the accuracy within that is the important part. But it's an electronic cash book at the end of the day. And yes, there's some great features when they tie in, you know, connect to your bank account. So you're not keying in the transactions, which obviously can cause errors. Those transactions are just feeding in. So the client's focus is more on what that expenditure is and applying it to the right nominals. And hopefully it's saving our bit of time in checking where those errors.
And it should be saving the client's time as well. But unfortunately, it's the old adage, isn't it? Garbage in, garbage out. So if the client isn't aware of what should go in the first place, then there's an opportunity here for Harts to help them with our bookkeeping service as well.
Very much so.
And we see a big growth in that coming over the next few years in the growth in the bookkeeping department. So when you're doing a set of accounts, what sort of work do you actually have to do? Because often we get clients coming in with saying, well, here are my records, can I have my accounts in a couple of days? And without realising the amount of work that actually has to go into them. So do you want to explain a little bit about what actually goes into producing a basic set of, say, limited company accounts?
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, the statutory requirements and a lot of work behind the scenes that we have to do. A lot of checks around company's house, change of directors, change of shareholders and things like that that are going to have an impact on the accounts, as well as, you know, general tidy up of the information that's come from the clients. You know, quite often there's a lot of work that needs to be done in getting those times.
Such as, want to explain a bit more detail about what actually goes on. So, for instance, reconciling the bank, making sure the figures are correct, and so on.
That's a big part of it. I mean, last week I was with a client, and their whole focus is looking very much at a profit and loss account. They want to know how profitable the company's been, and it was obviously going through them. Our approach as accountants is very much on the balance sheet side of things. Because basically what we're very much doing is going through a balance sheet and ensuring at the year end that balance sheet stacks up, makes sense. The debtors are recoverable, the bank balances, the creditors aren't understated, etc., etc. And fixed assets, making sure depreciation's been applied, looking at additions that they've purchased, and going through all the balance sheet side. And it's a very different view to potentially what the client has, because again, going back, they're looking at the profit and loss account, they want to see how profitable they are. But to ensure that the profit's correct, it's the balance sheet that's for us very important, because we're looking at the movement between last year's balance sheet, this year's balance sheet. The movement between the two is effectively the profit and loss.
Okay.
So that's where our focus is very different. We very much go through each stage of them. Normally the bank is obviously the key. You know, a large percentage of clients, all the money goes in and out of the company bank account. So if that's correct, everything kind of ties around that.
Brilliant.
And that's whether we're doing a set of accounts or online programs, management accounts, everything else. Bank is quite key to it. And everything else goes around from that. Obviously then with statutory accounts, we draft tax computations, looking at the latest capital allowances, making sure we're maximising the claims clients can make, ensuring that we're getting the profit as low as they possible. We don't meet many clients, do we, effectively, that want to pay tax.
No.
We do have some, remarkably, that are quite happy, but you know, a large percentage of them employ an accountant to ensure that
they pay the right amount of tax.
Pay the right amount
keep
of
your tax bills to a minimum.
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's very important for us to not create a problem later on by doing a claim that not quite right with HMRC, or could be challenged later on.
Yes.
Because it's creating a bit of a false false position. So we do everything we possibly can to make sure it's the right amount of tax.
And do you often get asked by clients to say, well, just stick that through, or just do this? Of course we do. But then the other side of it, quite often we're looking at going, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Yes.
And that's where, in accounts practice, we get to see such a broad spectrum of clients and industries, and we're able to almost cherry pick some of the better bits from other places.
Yes.
To say, but I've seen that company do that.
Yeah.
Or, well, have you thought about this?
Yes.
And obviously the training that we do, all the courses, etc., that letting us all the latest legislation, you know, the 130% capital allowance claim.
Yes.
I had a client last week who did very well, in fact, the profit and loss account, but put quite a few capital items in the P&L, which I actually ended up capitalising because I can get 130% on the capital allowance.
Absolutely.
Obviously, when I went with the adjustments back to the client, he was like, well, why have you capitalised those? It's the same rate. And I was able to say, no, we actually get, and it was, you know, he was very pleased then because we were able to, and that's the sort of knowledge we need to be doing and, like you say, getting the right amount of tax.
What's the most unusual thing you've been asked, or what's the most unusual set of accounts you've had to do over the years?
Oh, it's a strange question almost. I've seen so many different ones. You do get the odd client that you think, why are you speaking to your accountant just to get that? I mean, I did have someone ring me up with a specific question of where do I post a bottle of washing up liquid in my account, which I thought was a bit random.
Yes.
You know, and I think it was only about £4. You think, there's a bigger thing here.
Yes.
I couldn't really pick a particular. You know, some of them are all very bizarre, and they're all interesting in their own way. No two companies' accounts are the same. They have similarities, but what's important to one client isn't always important to the other.
Sure.
I think the most ridiculous thing I've seen is some of the company's house submissions from previous accountants or or where clients have just filed their own accounts at company's house.
Yes.
Balance sheets that don't even balance, or just Sage reports that go in and not part of statutory. Find it remarkable.
I know, it is remarkable, unfortunately.
Yeah,
yes.
And it's something I take pride, I think, as a company, and my department is very much installing those standards.
Sure.
In what we're filing is as good quality as we can get.
Hopefully now we're coming out of the pandemic, and obviously business has struggled a little bit over the last couple of years, but now we're seeing what's happening in Ukraine, and we've got the cost of living increases and the squeezes that are going on there. What are the sort of problems that clients are coming to you with? Are they common across the board, or they tend to be more specific on a client-by-client basis? Are they all experienced? Like, I know we know a lot of clients that are suffering from getting the right staff, but is there anything else which you come across which most clients are experiencing at the moment?
I think with what we're doing, the management accounts, I think we're still on the cusp of that. I think we're just at the start where we'll really start seeing those costs ramping up. Obviously, we're having the conversation with clients in talking and looking at their fee structures, making sure they're prepared for that change. One thing, I mean, you mentioned the pandemic. At the start of the pandemic, businesses did what businesses do. They adapted. They looked at the costs, and they really did go on a big cost call, really focused on what areas they could save. And obviously then when we got further into the pandemic, that transition wasn't so severe for them. And you say that a lot of companies did suffer. There was some we saw that did really well.
Yes.
Because they did that cost call exercise, they saved a lot of costs, but the turnover actually ended up being maintained quite successfully.
Sure.
So therefore, slightly different tax, and we've got quite a lot of profit and quite large tax bills.
Yes.
So we're having to manage a lot of that through. So it's very much that, but I think this one's slightly different in that the costs are being imposed onto them. So it's slightly different. So it's very much about passing those costs on to the customers. Still trying to see where they could save on some of the costs, but yeah, I think we're slightly early at the moment. I think as over the next 6 months, we'll really start seeing that kicking in. And the clients will start picking up the phone a lot more, and we'll start trying to help. Obviously, it's encouraging speaking to them now.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got to maintain that contact and maintain that relationship with the clients to help them out whenever we can. And then just one final question. What would you have done if you hadn't gone into accountancy?
It almost sounds a bit David Brent, to be fair, but I was in a band in my younger days.
Right.
So I would have loved to have kind of followed that. Sadly, the talent didn't quite support the ambition. And although I enjoyed that the time I did there,
sure.
I think once I got over a certain age, it was like time to let that go and really focus on what I do now. But I think I would have loved to have done that, but sadly, like I say, talent wasn't quite there. Let's leave it like that.
Well, I think we'll just leave it there. Well, thank you very much indeed, Andy, for talking to us this morning, and thank you for joining us for this podcast. Hope to see you on future podcasts, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.